Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Replacement for Healthy Mental Practices. Sorry, Debs will occasionally be away, and this happens to be one of those months. So rather than cancel the session, I usually don a wig and pretend to be her for however long it takes, because it's one of those, we all have something to share, and that's really what these sessions are about. Was anyone specifically had a question that they wanted to ask of today? Has anyone been to one of these sessions before? Or, yep, cool, a few of you have. Okay, so one of the ideas behind this is it's an opportunity for everyone to kind of come together and do some sharing and learning connected with kink. Normally it's chaired by a kink shrink who is a qualified psychotherapist. And has I think 40 plus years experience on the scene and about 20 plus years experience as a therapist. So when you bring those two things together, you get a great resource that you can draw upon. And actually the idea behind the sessions was that we would go out there. There were a number of issues in the kink community, and we decided that actually focusing on healthy interactions was the way forward. So she said, could I do a workshop? Yeah, no problems. And we both thought it was going to be a one-off. And we would just have one session to talk about mental health and kink. And you know what, we'd probably cover most of the subject and most of the questions in that one session. Yeah. That's 7 years later now, are we? About that. So it's been a regular feature of LAM. We've taken it on the road and integrated a version of it to Lamchester up in Manchester. We even now do it as part of the outdoor events. So when we're in Bedford next Saturday, the Scene Council is coming down from Manchester to run an outdoor version of the session, because we've realised it's actually one of the great resources that LAM offers. And Debs has actually gone on to do, is it every other Thursday?
It is outdoor now, yeah.
Okay, so every other Thursday night for about 2 hours, she puts on a session as well. And with those ones, there may be a topic connected with it, so you can find out in advance. Some of the ones recently have been deep dives into consensual, non-consensual, lots of recurrent themes around management, poly relationships, and how to open up your relationships to other people.
Mental health and ADHD and things like that.
Yeah, and also some very specific deep dives on individual areas of mental health, so whether it's ADHD, or whether it's Asperger's spectrum disorders, or whatever kind of is relevant, and people say, hey, I'd like to know more about this. And one of the great things about using her as a resource is that she can relate it in a good kink context to most people. Because at the end of the day, one of the common things that we all share is we're all new to kink at some stage. And we all have to battle all of those things where, oh my God, Jerry, you like tying women up?
What? Who said that?
Absolutely disgraceful behaviour. In modern society, how on earth can you justify your behaviour?
I'm sorry, sir, please spank me.
But the point is, we all have this natural conditioning. Yeah? We're all told we have to be polite to everyone and civilised. Well, how does that work if your partner loves to crawl around on the floor being verbally humiliated? Well, not only do they have to express the desire to want to do it themselves, but you have to get to that position where you are comfortable doing it as well. Okay? Because, my God, how kink relationships ever evolve is still something of a mystery to me. Because it's an awful lot easier if you look at things from just a standard relationship perspective. You have an idea what you're looking for in your partner, you scroll through enough profiles on Tinder or whatever, you'll find the physical match you're looking for. You'll then be looking for physical match and other characteristics. Oh my God, obviously likes having purple hair, likes tattoos, and probably likes rock music. So that might be the three things that someone's looking for that they can pick up on that level. Well, actually, when you look at it from a kink perspective, you've then got a whole hierarchy beneath that. So you might get your your easy to fix items, but then you've got to deep dive and work out actually, are you top, bottom, or switch? Because that's got to align and match up. And more importantly, what are you looking for at this particular point in time? So there are so many more factors that come in around kink relationships that need to be looked at. And that's why we always say that communication is the most essential tool in kink. Okay, and certainly the tool that you want to exercise before you start getting your rope out, or spanking someone, or flogging someone, or wiring them up to whatever device that you want, because you want to make sure that not only are you happy to do it with them, they are happy to have it done to them. So there's all that communication to get set, first of all. And then, as I was reminded upstairs earlier, is the person you're about to play with competent in that area? Because that's the next key question that should be crossing your mind. And am I allowed to use your phrase on that one? The first question you ask people when you match or look at discussing things is, what workshops have they attended? What skills have they picked up? What have they learned? Okay, and actually, that's one of the good style questions that I would cover in my due diligence for deviant sessions, because if you say, hey, are you kinky? You'll get a yes or a no. But actually, if you ask something that's much more appropriate, hey, wow, you're kinky, what workshops have you enjoyed? What have you learned about kink in the last 2 months? Okay? And if you turn around and go, not very much,
Not like it.
you could try and flag it, but then it's actually that, hang on a minute, what skills did you pick up from? I know. And I'm teasing as well, but it's one of those, you've got to understand, is the person not just enthusiastic, but are they competent to do what you want to do? Okay? Do they understand the subject that they're about to enter deep enough? Okay? Now, I get it, we're all new, but that's where learning things sensibly. So you might say, oh my God, I'm really new to this kink, but I'm absolutely pulled towards flogging people or impact play. Brilliant! Then start off with a light pair of simple floggers and build up. Don't say, I'm into impact play, we've only just met for the first time, go and stand on that cross while I get a brand new 16-foot bullwhip out and start warming up with it. Okay? I have seen people attempt to do these things. Okay? Thankfully, there are people around to tap them on the shoulder and say, that's an interesting looking bullwhip that we think you've just picked up from Ann Summers. It probably makes a fantastic noise, but it's not really of the appropriate quality to be hitting someone with it. And equally, you probably need to do a good 200 or 300 hours of wrapping it around teddy bears on the end of your bed before you start looking at playing with a person. Okay? An easy way to tell if someone is competent at a single tail whip is to look at their forearm. And if the muscle that's there is not more developed than mine, then they're not actually very good at single tail whip. Because actually the hours it takes to put it in, everyone who is good has an incredibly over-defined muscle just there in their arm. And you can tell just by looking at it that they use a whip on a regular basis. Or they do something which is asymmetrically straining their hand because they won't have a matching muscle on the other side. Okay. Different group of muscles that would build up, oddly enough, because again, it's a really specific muscle. When you are pulling a whip back and throwing the energy into it, it is this one. Now, if you're standing there going like that and throwing your dick forward and it's breaking the sound barrier, I need to book you for a straight back. But at the end of the day, it's just not the motion that you go through. So there are some obvious little telltale signs like that. And equally, sorry, I've just noticed the stream has paused. I don't know if it's still, no. I think I've paused, but the audio's still working, so I'll just let it carry going. But I have jumped my train of thought there for a second.
Whips and experience.
Whips and experience. One of the common ones, particularly if you spend any time reading people's profiles on FetLife, I'm reliably informed that some people do. The people who constantly send messages don't seem to, but there are human beings out there who do sit and read them. And one of the things you'll often see is, I'm a dominant of 30 or 40 years experience, which may be true. You may have taken a dominant role in life for 30 or 40 years, understandably. But if the second picture on their profile is a bed covered in toys, and you sit there thinking, God, I've been kinky for 6 months and I've got more than that. Or, I've been kinky for 6 months and I already know to buy quality kit. Then you're kind of answering the question. Because there are lots of people out there who will say, I've been training slaves for very long periods of time, and they get their kit bag out, and I'm not jealous of it in the slightest. Because all of it is badly weighted toys that don't give the effect that I'm looking for. I would far rather have 1 or 2 floggers in my bag that are well balanced and work for me, and they are tools that when I use them, they are an extension of my hand. Okay? Because when I'm playing, I want to connect with the person through the toys that I'm playing with. So to me, if they don't feel right and I can't throw that energy down the toy, then it's not right for me. So I will pick things up, no, because it doesn't feel right, I don't connect with it or put it down quickly. Whereas the ones that will proclaim their longevity on the scene invariably have some really shocking toy collections. Okay, so that's one that you can easily spot and look out for. Outside of that, ask lots of questions before you play with people. Okay, because as Debs would say, playing is a lot like adding salt to a meal. It can really enhance the flavours at low level, but once you've added too much, you can't go back. Okay? And that's a really good message for people, particularly if you are new to kink. You have the rest of your lives to explore this stuff. We've not gone anywhere for 16 odd years. I don't intend to go anywhere in the not too distant future. And therefore, take your time. Okay? There is no one going to jump out of the toy box with a fucking fanfare of rainbow glitter firing out their arse going, "Rah! You've done it all! You've got the prize!" Okay? It doesn't happen. Okay? And in many respects, those that do kind of go, "I've been on the scene for 9 months and we've done it all." Well, it invites people like me to turn around and say, "Ooh, you're hung upside down by your ankles while someone put a dildo-handled sword in your hole." And they'll go, "No." And say, "Well, you haven't done everything." Huh? Have you sutured the person's mouth closed or their eyelids? Or have you borrowed my ocular speculums and had a Clockwork Orange session? Okay, no. So be careful. And again, people who use that level of hyperbole, it's a little bit of a kind of crimson-coloured flag that they're starting to wave, okay? Because they're not necessarily thinking about it. I would have a lot more respect for someone who comes up and goes, "Oh my God, I really want to play, I want to do something, but I don't have that much experience." Because then I can say, yeah, no problems.
Can I add to that? A red flag is, I have no limits. So you don't know what the possibilities are there, mate.
Yep. And again, that one, legitimate response is, "Brilliant, no limits, do me a favour, just put your hand on this tree stump while I get the meat cleaver, because I've always wanted to do this." Very quickly, people develop limits. Logical limits, admittedly, but again, you can't assume anything with kink, okay? And lots of people will say, "Oh, naturally, no children, no animals, no things that should be flushed down the toilet." Well, actually, you know what? there's a whole bunch of people who really do like playing those kind of mucky games. But the good news is most of them are very good at communicating that factor. They will generally communicate it quite early in the communication because they don't want to go, oh my God, we match with absolutely everything, and now I've got to tell the one thing that is probably going to get me kicked to the curb. Okay, so those things are generally brought up a lot sooner. But anyway, so playing with someone, I would far rather be told, here is my limit, we're starting at a low level and we're going to build up. Okay? Because at the end of the day, I'll admit it, there's a few times over the years, because I have been playing for a very, very long time, where I might have played and short-circuited the person. Okay? Not intentionally. They came round and they thought, we're going to have a bondage session, we're going to tie up, we'll get some toys out later. And maybe their impression of what that was going to be would be mind-blowing sex, and they'd have maybe 15 or 20 orgasms and they'd be exhausted. Trouble is, I might be aiming for 3 digits. So I might actually have got to the stage where I'm tallying the orgasms someone has had on their body with tally marks, and I've run out of flesh because they're already quite heavy tattooed. It can be done. It was a very long session, 4 or 5 hours, but unfortunately, the person kind of was like, whoa, that blew my head. I have never played that intensively. I had no idea my body could be forced to do all of those things, and that was a little bit much. So I would far rather, over the years, set something that is more sensible and ratchet the person up over a series of sessions. Okay. There are several people that I've played with for quite a long time now, like 4 or 5 years, and they will tell you that most of the time we play, it gets a little bit more intensive every time. Because actually, if I'd have gone full tilt on day one, I'd have either dislocated a hip, or I'd have given the person such a nasty case of internal bruising that they wouldn't have been very happy with me. But over a period of time, they're now getting to the stage where, oh my God, that time where you literally had my head bouncing off the wall was absolutely amazing. Can we do that again? And I can start at a level rather than let's do the soft and gentle and build it up. I might be coming in at a 6 or a 7 and exiting the scene on a 12 or a 13 level. Whereas before, I'm going to start down at 0 and I might be finishing at 3 or a 4 because I know that the person hasn't built up the tolerance to be able to do all of the stuff yet. And particularly when you're playing with new people, okay? Because, oh my God, you spot the new people because they're all, oh my God, let me play with it. It's all shiny and new and I want to do all of this. But the problem is, we have a huge churn rate within our community because there's a lot of people who run into it like a bull in a china shop and then realise 6 months down the line they're having kind of pangs of doubt or self-doubt, or they're thinking that what they're engaging in is a little bit rude or naughty or immoral, or what would grandma say, or what would their parents have to say about it.
They're a bit fast and that has a bad reputation.
Yeah, or equally, yeah. And there's plenty of people that we will as a group sit around and go, yeah, they're not going to be around for a very long time. Because you can see, and there's no way that you can actually tap that person and say, look, for God's sake, please slow down. You're going too fast, you're going to burn yourself out. No, I'm not. This is amazing. I'm having the greatest fun of my entire life. Someone shoved a garden gnome up my arse.
Yeah, he wasn't very happy.
The gnome or the recipient?
I'm still smiling.
I was going to say, I'm never too sure, other than the fact that the gnome always seems to have a smile on his face. And in case any of you are worried, okay, we're talking about the gnome that holds the lamp. Not the one with the fishing rod or the wheel, because that would be really sick and twisted. It's like a normalish shaped gnome. Okay? And again, It's probably the one item that most people who walk into my house set as a hard limit very, very quickly. They might walk in with the "I've got no limits," and I go, "Brilliant! Meet Harris, my anal silicon no midget." And they're just like, "Really?" Yeah, no. Some people are very accommodating to him, others not so much. It's one of those. But thankfully, he's been a good friend of mine for years and years, and he doesn't get jealous when I play without him. Okay? It's one of those. The doorstop, Cerberus, yeah, that's a different matter, but there we go. So, be sensible, talk to people. If you're going to engage with someone, think about it this way, okay? You're about to take some risks. You understand how you process risk yourself, okay, and you do that before you engage in the activity, you enhance the likelihood of you coming out the other side feeling good about what you've done, okay? And it's one of those. Do what you are comfortable with, okay? Set your boundaries when you are at home, okay? Go out, explore the world, but have every intention of maintaining those barriers till you get back home. One of my exes, we actually met at LAM December 2017, I think it was. I was wandering around with a glittery unicorn horn on, as you do. And she was like, "Oh my God, unicorn!" Tried it on, and I'm like, you know the phrase, try on the horn, try on the unicorn. And we laughed and joked, and she was like, "Yeah, okay, you don't look that scary." And I kind of went click, click, opened my box, pulled out a pair of 12-inch long knives, and just went, "Can be a little bit scary. Ooh, I like knives. Can you play with me?" Yeah. So we arranged to play, and the rule was nothing between there and there was to enter her in any way, shape, or form. Because actually, I would have only been the second bloke that she'd ever played with, because her choice was women, and I understand, they're wonderful creatures. So we played, great time, lots of orgasms, definitely double digits. Week later, we played again, a lot of intense stuff again, stuck to the limits. Third time, about 2 weeks after that, got to about 2 o'clock in the morning, and she literally said, "Oh my God, please, just put me out of my misery and fuck me." I'm sorry. 5 minutes to calm down. So 5 minutes just to let all of those endorphins and dopamines that are flooding through our heads and giving us crazy ideas, let them settle down a bit, and I'm like, "I really am sorry. You're going to have to go home and come back without not being a limit." She's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. And you're going to have to spend at least 6 hours away from me, and then come in with the understanding that if I ask you, you can now do that to me. And then we'll play." And actually, several months later, she said that was the thing that really cemented trust in our relationship. Was that it would have been so easy for me to go, "Wow, 2 o'clock in the morning, I can have some fun." God, my balls were blue by that particular stage. But at the same time, I knew it wasn't the right thing to do. Okay? And we had a great relationship, and it lasted for years. And the reality was she was looking for someone who would have a romantic attachment with her. And I'm kind of a little bit emotionally unavailable at the end of the day. It's one of those. So she moved on and got what she was looking for out of that relationship. And I'm really glad, because in so many respects, I view relationships in kink as kind of like lines in three-dimensional space. So people might think, "Oh my God, I'm going to pick on you, and I'm going to do a little bit of guesswork here," and say, "Possibly switchy?" Yeah. Okay. Now, it's a good example, this one, okay, because normally we would think of there being a line, okay, and 0% dominant at one end and 100% at the other, and you look at where you feel you sit on that line. Well, in fact, it's actually where you are in relationship to each other. So you're actually not single points on those lines. You are a spectrum in your own right. And therefore, when you start looking at where you overlap with another person, you might find that there are small areas where you have an intersect and the Venn is quite strong, but that might not be all aspects of the relationship. Yep. Okay. And that's how I view this. So to me, in that way of looking at where people are today, where they're going to go, and where they are in their personal makeup, I can kind of see relationships as working for periods of time because someone needs a particular level of support or a particular set of skills, or they need a safe harbour in place to find their feet, find themselves and grow. So to me, relationships are generally things that will work for varying lengths of time, but I don't think that they are things where I could go, oh my God, Jerry, move in with me. We'll have
There's
the
no
most.
space in your flat.
Yeah, good point. It's full of toys.
I mean, I'm sure I've not fit.
It's full of toys. Full of toys. 3-bedroom flat. I sleep in one room. I have a pile of clothes that probably wouldn't even fill the area of this table. And the other rooms are full of toys. And I mean lots and lots of toys. There are 27 plastic packing boxes in my front room alone, all full of toys. Okay, and that's the reserve toys. There's a stack of my regular toys hanging in my bedroom, and in fact there are probably 50 or 60 floggers and various assorted whips hanging up in the bedroom. I once counted at least 150 dildos, butt plugs and insertables, and I don't own that many pairs of socks. So you can see where the priorities in my world are. It's toys everywhere. In fact, a couple of Christmases back, probably about 7-8 years ago now, my mother came to visit on Christmas Day, and she stood in my bedroom and looked around the room slowly like that twice. And when she eventually composed herself, the one question she had was, "You don't use all of this, do you?" Not at the same time, Mother. People generally break when I try and do that. Let's go and sit in the other room. And it was just, wow, because as far as she was concerned, there weren't that many sexual implements in the world. So it was a real shock to her. And equally, not everyone thinks of kinky things to do with 7-foot-long swords. I like it. It's one of those. And equally, because I view people as moving down these lines, I also understand that after a while, you will get different things from relationships because we all grow as individuals. One of the things that comes up in the workshops is the reality that we all exchange all of the cells in our body every 7 years. So effectively, you are a new person every 7 years. Has anyone known me for longer than 7 years? Right, go back and look at the pictures of me from 7 years ago. I'm not even the same person. Okay? I used to be 18.5 stone. Okay? And I lost most of it in literally a 2-year window. And equally, I am aware that my body has changed, my interests have changed, the things that I'm into are constantly moving. Okay? And as a result, I don't necessarily expect someone that I start a relationship with to be doing the same things years later. Okay? Some people, it works. I've got one play partner we've been playing now for must be about 13 years. And it's a really quite specific niche. She likes being beaten to the point of passing out and doesn't trust many people to do it. Whereas actually with me, it's like, yeah, I'll beat you to the point of you passing out, but then I'm not interested in having a quick fumble, grope, all of the rest of it. I know what the protocol is. Leave her in a pile on the floor for the first 5 minutes, then wrap her in a blanket. That's not me. Wrap her in a blanket, give her another 5 to 10 minutes, give her a sugary, milky drink, and then 5 minutes later find some food for her to eat. Do not attempt to speak to her in those first 25 minutes. Because for the first 15 of them, when you look at her straight in the face, one eye is pointing in that direction, and the other one is pointing in the other. It's completely disconnected, and she has no ability to communicate with the outside world whatsoever. It's a hugely vulnerable state for her to go into, but it's a big cathartic release for her. So she needs to do that every so often because it's her way of resetting. Okay? And our play hasn't changed much over the years because it's quite specific. And at the same time, I don't get to meet that many people who like to be beaten that hard that I can make them and the furniture move across the room. Okay? So I'm happy not to push that relationship and say, oh my God, I want to be doing this with you because hell yeah, I get everything I'm looking for when we play. Okay? And I'll come away at the end of it because I've had the physical exhaustion of playing with someone and pushing them into that state. Then the stress and point in time of being the one that's looking after them. Okay, and I might not get to actually calm down and relax for another 3 or 4 hours after we play. Okay, but I will then kind of get there and go, oh, fuck, I'm exhausted. Shit, that was damn good fun. Okay, it's one of those. And equally, there aren't many people I know that like to be beaten at that kind of level. So if it was my big thing and, oh my God, Jerry, bench, beat you now. Not your cup of tea, is it?
Not really, no.
I was going to say, I was going to mention Alan used to put on a good show with you there once in a while, but it's one of those. It's not every.
Can I just come in there and talk about? You mentioned a couple of times talk the French and things like that, but kink and sex are not necessarily related.
And
I'm quite open. I mean, there aren't that many kind of submissive 50+ women. I use escorts quite a lot. And one of the questions I often get is, don't you want to fuck me? And the answer is no. I might not even get undressed. Believe me, for the 2 hours that I book you, I'm enjoying myself. I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
And that's, some people get it, some people don't. It's just like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. And again, it's up to the definition of the individuals and what you're looking for. And again, what you wish to communicate. It doesn't have to be sexual. There are plenty of people who, for whatever reason, do not engage in sexual activities. But they're in very strong bonded relationships that are kink connected. Okay? A lot of people with rope, for example. You might have a bottom who really enjoys being tied up, loves to be suspended, but actually that's kind of where the game starts and ends. There might not be that sexual connection between people, and that's perfectly acceptable. But others, you know what? If it floats your boat and you have to have that engagement, that interaction, just be really clear about it. Okay? We've got some new consent workshop stuff coming up in the not too distant future. A banner a little bit like our Clear on Consent in pink is going to say, "Wanna fuck?" Fully understand consent in kink. Okay? Because at the end of the day, we're really trying to help everyone have the tools because it's perfectly acceptable. Oh, I can't think it should go fuck.
The thing is, if you make it fun, people remember it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're in that world where you can ask those questions of people, but you also have to own the response. And if Tinker turns around and went, oh my God, I find that really offensive, then that's on me because the words came out of my mouth to walk that back. Okay?
But you know, you said that.
Exactly. It's one of those, but I would not run around the room randomly saying to people, "Oh my god," because that is just pushing what I want on them too much. Okay, and at the end of the day, yeah, we've all got things that we want to do, but you've got to find the people who want to do it with you. Okay. One of the references that comes up a lot is the wheel of consent. Okay, because every single activity has 2 levels to it. Okay, I want to beat someone. I have to find someone who wants to be beaten. Works that way. Okay, so every one of your interactions, you should naturally think about the receiving end of it. Okay, because otherwise you're going to wander around looking for your own thing, and that's when you will run into problems because, oh my god, you signed up to have a bondage session, but you didn't sign up to the electroplay and the other stuff afterwards. And if I didn't say we're doing bondage and then electroplay, you're obviously going to be upset, and you have every right to be. And equally, you should feel comfortable to say, hey, we've done the bondage stuff, really enjoyable, but leave the electrics at home, we didn't discuss that. Okay? And at that stage, I have no right to say, but I've just tied you up for 30 minutes and used all of my energy doing that. Yeah. Now, if you'd have negotiated beforehand and said, we're going to do the bondage and then some electroplay, you'd have either gone yay or nay. But to put someone on the spot, it's a big no-no. Okay. So yeah, think about your interactions, be as clear as you can. And everyone has different needs. I have like a Haynes manual, how to get them the best out of your cosmic one, hints and tips. And literally it's written that way, okay? Because for me, that's the easiest way of putting it across. Oh my God, this is what I'm interested in. And I actually separate it down and say, if you want to come and create some content with me, do a bondage shoot or whatever, it's a real simple checklist. Or playing at the club, it's 5 or 6 questions because I'm not interested in fucking someone in the club. So it naturally sets certain activities off the schedule. But if you're talking about coming to visit me at my studio, or you want to come and do a DS dynamic and role play across a couple of days where you're stuck in a cupboard under my stairs, I live in a flat, so it's not going to happen, but in theory, I want to actually get all of that communicated very, very clearly. So I'm going to be going in a lot more detail. So rather than 5 or 6 questions, it might be 2 sides of A4 that you have to work through to give me clear consent, understanding that you've said, these are my limits, this is what I'm happy with. And then together we can go, hey, the then of this is that it looks like we're going to be doing these activities and we're not going to be doing these activities. Simple as that. But equally, in order to write that kind of thing, you've got to know yourself. Okay? So spend time, whenever you play, talking to people about what you enjoyed, what was great about it, was there something that you needed to improve? And particularly when you are in a relationship, use that time because, oh my God, you both wanted to get better. Easiest way to get better, talk about it. Okay? Because by doing that, you will say, hey, I really liked that, didn't necessarily like this. Or I'm really comfortable with these terms in humiliation, but because of my irritating grandma at the age of whatever, I have an issue with that word. And that's perfectly acceptable. Okay? And it's really odd. Some people, it's almost difficult to repeat the words they like to have said to them. Because in an open room, I know it's going to shock some people. But then there might be something very, very simple that is a big, no, can't use that because someone who was abusive to me in the past used that particular phrase and I have issues with it. And it's like, yep, cool. That's where I have to be very, very careful in how I tiptoe around it. Because using words like slut, lots of people seem to really like that. Oh my God, I'm a slut. You call someone a slag, very different connotation. Yeah. And it's one of those. And some people, I've known people who go, yeah, don't call me a slut, like, Jesus, I'm a fucking dirty whore of a slag. And it's like, whoa, okay. So it needs that communication, because what you don't want to be is in the middle of playing, suddenly throw that kind of thing onto the table, and someone will just freeze. No. And at that particular stage, there is an opportunity to go, stop, okay, do we need to talk about this? Is it something that we need to, I apologise for saying it, can we get to a stage where we can step this back 3 or 4 steps and build up, or is it a, that's fucked it for the night and we need to learn that lesson and put this to bed, and that will be our way of me making sure that I never use that word ever again, okay? And that way you can communicate it, clear it, and move forward successfully with it. Does anyone have any questions? No. One thing I would say is there is a playlist containing most of the HMP sessions over the last 7 or 8 years on our YouTube archive. We're trying to build it in a way that there will be searchable topics. But when you're working with someone who produces such a dearth of information on a weekly basis, it is very difficult to get the archivists to keep up. Okay, particularly when 2020, when we started doing HMP sessions weekly, the amount of content that means that someone's got to sit through and listen to all of it to pick out the topics and the keywords and all the rest. So unless you're sitting there going, oh my God, that sounds like my ideal job, in which case, give us a shout, because we're always looking for volunteers in that area. It'll take us a little bit of time to kind of piece it all together, because we didn't realise how much valuable content we've been creating over the years until during that lockdown, when we started getting messages from people going, oh my God, thank you for going weekly. We were really bored counting the penguins down in Antarctica. And now that you're producing more content than we could actually keep up with, we're no longer concerned about our 3-book limit. Because you go to remote locations like that, weight is massively important. They will allow you to take 3 reading books with you. Okay? Which, if you're down there for 6 months, you might be swapping those books amongst your mates, etc. Well, it turns out an awful lot of them were kinking, and we're catching up on the LAM archive once a month. So as soon as we went weekly, they were like, oh, fucking yeah. And then that actually instilled a bunch of them to enter a competition we were running for the Far-Flung Kink, which is buy something each month from the most remote location from London, and you'll win some money to spend again. So huge numbers of soft toys and teddies were going down to the polar region, which we found absolutely hilarious, because you know what, Kinksters, they're everywhere. It's as simple as that.
Deb's workshop goes out most Thursdays, or alternate Thursdays, 7 o'clock UK time. And we have people from Canada, we have people from China, we have people from South Africa, all just staying up or making time to go to those workshops from all over the world. It's quite fun.
Yeah. Because there really isn't anything like LAM. And that's one of the crazy things. I was talking to our guests who are going to be the speakers this afternoon, and they're like, yeah, there's nothing like this. And I'm like, the closest to this is the San Francisco Fetish Flea. About 13 stores in a really large open plan space. Don't like open plan spaces like conference centres, because they just don't, have Art Deco band vaults hidden inside. Sorry, but it's one of those. Cool. Any questions? No? Cool. I mean, obviously, if you have any questions connected with the event throughout the day, grab any of the crew wearing one of the crew shirts. We're all here to help you. If you need to be introduced to people, or you have questions about what's going on, ask. Because one of the key things that you will hear repeated from us is we were all new once. Okay? And it's important to make that space for new people. Find your feet, learn correctly.
And even if you're not new, as you said earlier, you never stop learning.
Yeah.
And talk to the traders.
Yeah. Awesome resources. Yeah. It's one of those. It's as a group, there is so much that we can all learn from each other, and that's really what this space is about: is people coming together, sharing, learning from each other, swapping ideas, and growing better as a community. Right. If there's no questions, I am going to turn the stream off.
Do you want to quickly pimp next week?
Oh yes, I'm going to do a quick pimp for Bedford next Saturday. We're doing an outdoor event and barbecue. So if anyone has transport and fancies getting up to there, it's a damn good laugh because it's like Lamb but outdoors. And we've got an awesome fire performer booked for it. And later in the year, there are posters dotted around the place. We do a retreat weekend in November where it's basically 18 workshops across 2 days. So if you're like, oh my God, I want to have a deep dive, and this year the specialist subject is going to be needle play and sharps play. And we've actually got 4 sessions on that one from Sadistica, who's probably one of the best creative people I've seen in a long time. But it's also one of those that's like not prepared to listen to someone else's, oh, you must always do this. We'll sit down and go, right, okay, why have I always got to do that? Let me actually, take some pictures of what happens when you cork the end of a needle so that I can see, is there actually material that gets left in the sharp end of the needle that I'm about to pull through a person? And the answer is yes, it does happen. So we don't cork the ends of needles anymore for that one simple reason. But it took her getting the macro lenses out and taking the pictures and proving what actually went on, because there were a whole school of people who were like, yeah. You put a needle through and the safest thing to do is put a rubber cork on the other end. Now we know that that's not the case. Okay, so without people like that, we don't pick up that information. So that's what that weekend is about. It's